Accessibility is a good thing, isn't it? Well, not always. It actually heavily depends on how it's done. Accessibility can greatly improve a game, but when done wrong, it can actually hurt the overall game experience. So what is accessibility? The idea of accessibility is inherently good because more people playing a game is better due to more money being generated for the greedy parent company. Subtitle settings option, colorblind mode, or maybe even an easy mode. Please don't kill me, Dark Souls fans. However, when you actively make the game worse to appeal to a wider audience, it can actually hurt it. So this is one of the things we probably all can agree that is bad. It was so bad that we even got an entire update in order to fix it. But why did this happen in the first place? Well, maybe because a higher time to kill removes the need to react to something very fast, which makes the game, well, more accessible. It also hurts the overall quality because people can just run away from combat. And there is no surprise moment anymore. So much that I personally would even argue that to lower the time to kill even more, as a lot of characters still kill incredibly slow, and generally increasing the pace of the game with the primary weapons would be something that I think would be good for the game as a whole. You thought that it takes too much time to kill someone with a low DPS overall? There is more. People can now run around the map at supersonic speed with a very low windup and a heavy disadvantage if you want to follow them. They said that sprinting is mainly for traversal for the PvE regions, but it's also a really easy way to move around without thinking too much about how you move, and it also allows moving away from combat pretty easily. And its downsides don't end there. If you try to chase somebody and try to shoot them, and that doesn't kill them, you basically can't catch up anymore because the end lag, wind up, and the shooting itself takes too much time for you to ever catch up to somebody that's constantly sprinting away from you. So they will just run into their team, and you can only kill them if you suicide, which will be followed up by their team reviving them. Truly a fun experience. Next. A lot of abilities in BFN have one thing in common. They are big win fight buttons. Fang Fu, Big Bang Beam, Sap Trap, Blue Blazes, Swoop Slam, Disco Tornado, Rocket Ride or Staff Slam. All of these easily can be used to win a 1v1 fight, so you can exchange skill for pressing a button. This is in general really unfun to play against, and having abilities more skill-based, or more of a tool instead of a damage or win button, would be a lot better. But if you want to go for accessibility, making a button to win a fight is a thing you would do. Fall off would be cool, wouldn't it? But if someone doesn't understand that he does less damage from far away, he will always shoot from far away and have a bad time. This is why we should just remove fall off. Or at least that's what I think might have happened at PopCap headquarters. And while that might be better for new players, it can also make the game worse for them due to them dying from a fall off. If a max rank soldier shoots them from across the map, that's not fun for new players. And this might not only happen to new players, but it would also happen to everyone, because fall-off isn't exclusive to new players. It's exclusive for everyone. Exclusive not being there. Hello again. No! Well, variants are complex, and new players might not understand why different players have different properties on their weapons, even though they play the same character. Especially with added cosmetic that might hide the type of variant for new players. But people love variants, and they're really cool. They wouldn't want them removed. We'll just add a new upgrade system that looks like it allows players to create their own variants, but actually barely changes the character's playstyle at all, and has a lot of upgrades that are incredibly bad. So people didn't like most of these changes that might have been made for accessibility purposes, but what did PopCap do to improve them after they realized that people didn't like them? Time to kill has been significantly improved overall, and that's the one thing that they actually listened to, mainly because it really heavily decreased the fun of the gameplay experience. Anything else that has been changed? Yeah, sprinting. Sprinting has been nerfed, but it's still comparatively easy to avoid combat with it. the problems with when fight buttons or abilities haven't been addressed yet, and looking at how the new characters are designed like, this likely won't change in the future, so we'll still get big do 125 damage buttons. The variants are actually one of the things where popcap decided to cancel their idea, implemented legendary upgrades that basically work like variants, but don't allow any other good upgrades to be equipped at the same time. But why did they change their mind after all? I've thought of two reasons as to why that might have happened. First of all, being the community missing variants, especially the young players, and that's the main complaint of young people. They don't like that BFN doesn't have any variants, and they like variants, they want them to be in BFN as well. And if your main part of the community wants that, you should probably do it, or at least think about it. Also important is the fact that legendary upgrades only get released pretty infrequently, so much that after almost a year of the game being out, there are only 4 legendary upgrades overall, and as such it will probably take the entire game's lifespan to even get a single legendary upgrade for every character. And with only 1 legendary upgrade for every character, the idea that people might get confused by it is significantly lowered. More issues with upgrade system don't seem to be addressed, or will never actually be addressed. The upgrade system is still bad and doesn't really change playstyles and doesn't really work like they said it would work like. There are only 2 upgrades that even have been planned to be reworked, so it's easy to assume that a full rework won't happen. Next is going to be fall-off. What I'm going to tell you here is only a theory, so it might not be true, but it's the best explanation that I could come up with as to why we don't have fall-off yet. In the beginning of Farmers, the game didn't have fall-off, and some players realized that and were against it. Then YouTubers and communities mentioned that, so even the majority of players, the kids or the young people that aren't on social media and on the loud voices, realized that and found it out. So now they knew when they were having the worst time of the game, and pressured the devs into doing something about this. But the devs didn't want to add fall-off, but due to the high demand, they couldn't let the voices be unanswered because that would seem bad for them. At that point, they just decided to make a placebo, because if a majority of the community thinks that there's something like fall-off, they won't ask for it anymore. Which is why they made drag. Drag never actually got out. Most of you are probably going to know this already because you are not the people that this was. Drag, the lie of drag being in the game was made for. But data miners and players quickly found out that there was no drag. There's nothing feelable drag, and there's nothing in the files that says drag or would work like drag. The projectile speed got lowered on some weapons, but that is not drag, and that is not helping against sniping. Not at all. However, kids didn't hear that, due to them not being on social media or on other platforms, so they didn't realize that. So they still believe that drag's in the game, and they won't ask for fall-off anymore. And the part of the fandom that knows that drag isn't in the game doesn't have enough voices to make popcap listen to them. This means that it's actually fairly likely that popcap will never add fall-off, or they think they got the range issue with characters under control, which they definitely don't, but yeah. So this is what has been done about accessibility issues so far. Now let me try to present the ways of how these accessibility issues could be fixed, and younger people could play the game without forcing better or more complex players to play a lesser game. The first is better tutorial. There's so many people that play characters wrong or don't know about their abilities and still go into multiplayer with them. The initial tutorial doesn't actually teach any gameplay mechanics, but rather just decides to teach players how to spend in-game currency. Very good choice, popcap, because hey, why know how to play if you can just spend rainbow stars on rugs? It's not uncommon to see a sniper player that doesn't have any idea of how the charge-up mechanic of them works. Adding an optional tutorial for every character that teaches the primaries and abilities and overall game plan would likely help a lot with players and would help a lot with characters being too complex for players to understand. So they could make the characters more complex, if that would be the thing. They could also reward players who do them with cosmetics and coins, so that new players would be more likely to do them before jumping into multiplayer. Talking about multiplayer. The tutorial points you directly to the multiplayer portal and barely even mentions the PvE regions. It's not like you really see how that you should supposed to go there. Multiplayer portal is big and you see people running into there, but you're almost never gonna see people going into the PvE regions. But if a new player asks on how to learn the game, you will likely point them to the PvE regions because those are the best way to learn the game. So it would be nice if the game did this as well and would show players the way into the PvE regions, or at least maybe start with a sequence in town center similar to how they did it in GW2. Where you get to learn against AI before you could even go into a real game. A good new player experience is the key to accessibility, because if you let a new player learn the game, they will feel like they accomplished something. If you just make the game simpler so that the new player barely has to learn anything, the new player will feel like the game lacks depth and balance, and at the same time you will alienate your audience that wants a more complex experience. I'm hoping that PopCap will realize this in the future and work on making BFN more fun for everybody.